The Tesseract is a virtual cube within a cube that we carry with us everywhere we go and process our world through. Our outer cube contains filters and buffers built out of our experience and memories. They exist to protect us from undergoing future trauma, yet, as we move through the world, they can also act to distort our perception. We have our own unique combination of lenses mapped to it. The inner cube is pure and filter-free. This can be accessed through mindfulness, as we hold every thought captive while remaining completely invested in each moment. We have access to this pure center and are able to discern what is before us in a more unbiased way. But how does this relate to music? I've used Rudolf Laban's movement theory as inspiration for my mapping strategy of movement to customized effects racks in Ableton Live. So, movement in 3D space is broken down into Cartesian coordinates. X is right and left, or in and out. Y is up and down, and Z is forwards and backwards. Along each axis there is a continuum, and in each opposite direction there is an equal and opposite polarity. According to Laban, movement contains within it the concept of time, space, and weight or gravity. The x-axis is associated with space and communicates flexible or direct motion as it moves towards and away from the center or in the right or left direction of the plane. The y-axis is weight or gravity and encompasses strong or light movement as its highest and lowest point. And finally, the z-axis is linked to time, where quick or sustained movements occur across the forward or backward continuum. I've translated these characteristics and positions into movement mapping and mixing parameters. For example, along the y-axis, up and down, I've created an effects chain that pans between a high-pass filter when the hand is up and a low-pass filter when the hand is down. Between these two filters, I've set up a bypass where there is no filter. These have been calibrated to the body's proportions and range of motion. Along the z-axis, I've created an effects rack that chains a very compressed filter at the front, a bypass at the center, and a thick delay toward the back of the spectrum. In the demonstration, I've mapped my hand to forward and backward motion, and the sound being processed is affected in a fluid manner across the polarity. Along the x-axis, I've created an effects rack that pans sound smoothly across right, center, and left. This axis can also be interpreted as inner and outer or open and close. If I choose to use this axis in that way, for instance, I would map both hands to a bypass of filters toward the center, and a chorus or doubling effect building in intensity the further my hands moved away from the center, which the system recognizes as my torso. So, the x-axis can be used for out and in gestures, or right and left, depending on the body part being mapped. There are several different effects racks mapped to corresponding movements along the 3 dimensions with unaffected bypasses at the center of each chain. This center creates a center bypass cube. Multiple versions were created deliberately as a modular way to represent different emotional combinations and to be combined into individualized tesseracts. A tesseract needs 3 dimensions: time, space, gravity, or x, y, and z. And it needs movement, or space-time. As a sound source is played and a person moves through this virtual architecture of filters, they mix and shape the sound into something other than the original form, a 4th-dimensional experience. Through movement and focus, we might get to know which combination of movements create specific textures, contours, and patterns of the affected sound source. By holding a neutral gesture in stillness at the mapped bypass cube, we can perceive the difference between the source and the distortion of it. This is not unlike when we move through life, mindfully paying attention to the difference between the distortions of our early or past-built filters, prejudices, or buffers, and a centered, more clear source. The Tesseract sonifies unique filters of perception and represents the varied ways individuals embody and perceive their movements through events in life. Perhaps we might not shed these ingrained filters that shape the way we assess events and interactions, but we can mindfully route our awareness to the peace within, attune to the stillness of source, and project some peace into the shape of our lives.